Have you ever wondered what you will do when it's time to care for a loved one? How you might start conversations with aging family members or those in need of care? How you might begin to prepare for the journey ahead? In life, the true level up is to live each day to the fullest, to experience the journey and leave a legacy for generations to come. The challenge of life is that no one gets out alive, which means at some point, you may become a caregiver for family or friends. In this episode of Mind Game Level Up Your Life, I invite you to step out of your comfort zone and into the Cozy Caregiver Café with guest Allison Wyman, a family caregiving attorney, consultant, and coach who has experienced firsthand how caring for loved ones can change you in ways you've never expected. Join us as we learn more about Allison's two-time cancer caregiver story and how when she returned to work as a lawyer after supporting her mother through cancer, she recognized and felt called to support her clients on a more holistic level. Being a caregiver touches our lives in so many ways. Allison thoughtfully shared that preparing to be a caregiver in advance of the storm will help you better navigate through it when the time arrives. Having those difficult conversations, not just about money, finances, or estate planning, but setting boundaries for yourself as a caregiver helps you help others. It turns out capturing the stories of our loved ones not only creates a legacy for family, it also helps us make informed decisions to navigate the storms of life when they arrive. Allison has created a course and a growing community of caregivers so that together we can walk each other home and out of the storm. Let's chat with Allison. Welcome to Mind Game, a podcast to level up your life. My name is Stephanie Painshaw, and I'm excited for you to join me on a journey behind the scenes where we'll dig into the stories of resilience, mindset, and unlock the simple habits that will help you change the game. Before we dive in, I want to express our gratitude for your continued support. Your energy powers our quest to provide content that encourages you to unlock new levels of personal growth and step out of your own comfort zone. If you're inspired by an idea or have a suggestion for a future topic, connect with us at mindgamelevelupyourlife.com. Your feedback is a power-up that helps us continue on this epic adventure. So if you're ready to get out of your own way and explore what you didn't know you needed to know, you've come to the right place. So buckle up, open up your mind. It's time to level up. So I want to welcome Allison to our podcast. Tonight's episode of Mind Game Level Up Your Life is going to talk a little bit about Allison's life, the Cozy Caregiver community. I think I got that right. And the two of us met in a podcasting class, and we were in a breakout room. It was lunchtime for me, and we popped into this room, and Allison had this absolutely amazing energy. And I was just drawn to the feedback that she was sharing with people, to the story that connected with me, and I think will resonate with a lot of you that are listening, because and I don't think of myself as old, but as I turned 47, and that was when I started the podcast, was 47, that does mean that my parents are older, and I have had conversations with my parents about, we're at a different point in life, and what does that mean, and how do we support? And Allison's energy is absolutely amazing, and just helping people think about that. And I know I just instantly felt this is someone who I want to talk to and learn more about your story. So thank you so much for joining me tonight. You are recording with us live from New York. So tell us a little bit about who you are and what do you do during the day, since I've
Oh,
captured your evening time.
well, Stephanie, thank you so much for having me. And when you said live from New York, of course, I just think, and live from New York. I've
Yes,
never had the
I didn't even
opportunity
think
to
of
say
that,
that.
but yes,
So
how
thank
often
you.
will I get to say that live from New
So
York?
thank you. Thank you. I am just so grateful to be here. I love that you started out by talking about your age and how, although you feel still a certain way within your body, or at least that's what I heard. The realities of it, you recognize objectively mean that even though you still feel young and vibrant and life is working, that it also may mean that for the next generation, life isn't working as well, or people aren't feeling as vibrant. This type of legacy work, whether it's through the law or through capturing family stories, helping families plan or sitting with families as they mourn. This is my life's work. It's one of my greatest honors. And as a family caregiving attorney, consultant, and coach, I just absolutely love working with families as they think through how to prepare, how to protect, and how to enjoy life.
And I like that you've put those together. What really resonates with me is to enjoy life. That is the point, to enjoy the time that we have. And I think as we all get older, and it's inevitable, it happens to all of us, we're all getting older, the perspective of our lives starts to shift, and to have someone with your energy, and I don't, I think you can all hear this in Allison's voice as you're listening, but she has this energy and just this presence that I feel would guide people through those tough conversations, and just help you step into that moment and know that you can be the best plan that you can be, or know that you have someone you can trust to help you navigate through that process. So how did you find your way into this? I think it's absolutely amazing that this type of role exists, that there are people that help us to navigate those really hard moments in life. How did you find your way into this profession, or taking it from law into caregivers?
I really appreciate that question, Stephanie. And it's one of those fields where there is more attention than there used to be, which is phenomenal. But in the caregiving world, there is not nearly enough attention that's being paid. And so I was recognizing in my own law office, which I have as a lawyer, I was
Right.
recognizing that there were elements that families wanted who came to me for legal services that didn't fall under the umbrella of law. And I really felt, not as a lawyer, but as a person, that I was doing a disservice by not trying to also address and capture these needs and these wants, because people go to an estate planning attorney, which is a part of what I do in my law office, and they may or may not wanna be there, but they recognize it's the right thing to do and it's the responsible thing to do. And particularly when you're working with parents to minor children, it's it's a really scary thing to do, because a large part of what you're thinking about is how to protect your child in the very unlikely event that both parents end up dying at the same time. And so when you think about things like guardianship and you think about how assets should be transferred and whether there should be a trust, because not
Yes.
everybody wants all their children to receive a certain amount of finances in one lump sum. I mean, these are conversations which are really just not so great. And it's always my hope, Stephanie,
Yeah.
although this doesn't always play out, that when people are older and have had more life, that they're more willing to reflect back on that life and then reflect forward what they're hoping for next generation. So it's always the hope, right? That even
Yes.
though these estate planning conversations are really difficult when you are a parent to a young child, and I am very blessed to be a parent to a 2.5-year-old son, there's always the hope that the conversations will be easier. But of course, that's not always the case. That's not
Yeah.
always the case.
And I appreciate what you said about the holistic piece, looking at not just the law, but we're human, and there are
Mhm.
things that we need to look after in the legal aspects, but there's also different pieces that are part of our lives, preserving those stories I've heard you mention a few times. And I liked what you just said about the reflecting back, but also reflecting forward so that your
Mhm.
legacy lives on beyond the time that you're here on this earth with others. And so I think just thank you for the work that you do and
Mhm.
the conversations that you help us to have with people. And I think on behalf of the viewers or audience, or I'm not sure what to call podcast listeners, all of the listeners out there, that it's helpful for us to think about these things before you hit that crisis kind of moment when it's really hard, and it's hard to think through rationally because we're in an elevated emotional state. So is there a personal story that kind of drew you into that piece, or was caregiving always kind of what you wanted to do?
Definitely personal stories. I am a two-time cancer caregiver to my parents. So my dad passed away in 2006, and that was 6 months before my wedding. and I was still in college at the time, so I was very young. And then my mom, she was diagnosed with cancer 3 weeks into my very first and dream legal job as an attorney. And so I ended up taking the entire year off, really just dropping my entire career to go and to be with her. And thankfully, she is doing well now. She's been cancer free for more than a decade. And so we just feel so grateful every single day we, that she's here and that we get to celebrate with her. Those are the highlights, Stephanie. I'm just gonna be
Yeah.
very honest. Those are sort of the highlights of how caregiving has come into my life. But when you're waist deep in caregiving, it is extraordinarily difficult. Or when you're waist deep in estate administration and grief after someone passes, it is extraordinarily difficult. And so just because we're all on this ship together called life, and we know that we're going to hit these storms, even if people don't necessarily want to talk about it because it's not always the most pleasant conversation. I really want to encourage people to get ahead of the storm and to prepare because I promise you that if you do that, the horizon is so much brighter on the other side of the storm.
And thank you for sharing your story and for I'm sorry that you lost your dad, and I'm happy that your mom is okay. I did have a run-in with cancer. I had melanoma and had to have surgery for that. Everything worked out
Oh my goodness.
okay, but it certainly it brings a whole other perspective, and that was quite a long time ago now, thankfully. Everything has been good, but any medical issues as they come up, they're always a reminder to me to step back and look at life and where we're at. And melanoma, it was on my back. We were able to catch it early, but it certainly wasn't something I was expecting at that point in life. But it did bring the gift of perspective.
Mm.
And I hope I never have to think about those conversations until it's later, but again, there's different generations that we're looking at, and I know my mom and dad have entered into conversations with myself and my sister about what do we do with the farm and how do things work after, and they do a very good job of navigating that, and I know they're searching for who do they talk to learn more about that, and I think that holistic piece really resonates with me. Being in education, we always talk about not just educating the student, but educating the whole student. The physical, social, emotional, and mental well being is important. And when we have all of those areas, we can really recognize the human and see the human in each other. I like that metaphor of, storms are coming and you can sail into them and you can be very prepared for that and help to navigate that and have your connection set up and have things in place that, and I think this ties into mindset, which is what the podcast is about, is that you can level up going into what you know will be tough so that you can. I think one of your social media clips said grief it is a bucket, and one of the things that you have to do is sit with that grief, and it's not easy, but it's part of the process. And if you can just be in that moment and be surrounded by the people that you love and not have to worry about those other pieces, I think that would make it not easier, but at least gives a path, and so that you can focus on maybe one thing at a time. Does that sound?
Oh, absolutely, absolutely, and I'm feeling so grateful that it seems like you and your family have been able to have these conversations. And when you said farm, of course, my mind just goes to this beautiful farmland, and it's really incredible that you're able to have these open conversations with your parents.
Mhm. And I appreciate that they're forward thinking, and I know my mom, navigated that with my grandma and with my grandpa, and that the paperwork is hard and it continues on when you're trying to deal with all of those different pieces, and everybody's at a different point when things happen. It's not that it's still sometimes weird to think of it in that way. That there will be a time when I won't have my parents around to talk to. If they're listening, I'm very thankful that they're here and they're well planned. But I think kudos to them for thinking ahead for that. And I think it's helpful just to talk about it. And perhaps it's something that, like you mentioned, that caregiving is something that there's more attention on, but perhaps not enough attention on yet as to what we can do as we navigate closer to that. So, one of the things that I noticed that you have is a digital course. You're also a podcaster, so we're going to circle back to that. And I'm thankful to be online with you and learning from you. Uh, when or why did you create the course? I guess tell us what the course is and then why did you create it?
Ah, Stephanie, thank you so much. So the course is called How Your Family Wins in Caregiving. And I am just so jazzed at this concept because when it comes to caregiving, it's really easy to think about what we lose, right? We
Yeah.
potentially lose the person that we love because of the natural process of life and aging and death. And we lose money and we lose agency and we might lose faith. I mean, losing faith, my faith is a central part of my life, but it's also something that during my caregiving years I definitely lost. So the elements of losing are very clear. And for someone, especially someone like yourself who is so intelligent and articulate and loves mindset, that's just not a place that I wanna live. I don't wanna live in this world where if I love somebody, I just have to be prepared to lose, 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 lose. I understand that there are processes in life which I cannot control, but I still wanna win, and I want every single family to win when it comes to aging and when it comes to what I call the golden period and when it comes to death. You can win in death, absolutely, and I want that for all families, and so I wanted to create something that could hopefully engage people and
Mhm.
allow them to have conversations with their loved ones that they need to, and to gather the family stories and the reflections that are a central part of who they are because they come from their family and these are their family stories. And I also feel like when it comes to caregiving, a central part of it that people don't really necessarily think about because in general caregivers are so giving is they don't think about their own boundaries. They don't think about what it is they actually need.
Yes.
And having a sense of those boundaries, the real boundaries, like the financial boundaries, I can only spend X amount of money or contribute X amount of money to
Mhm.
my parent, even if they need money without putting my financial future and my family at
Right.
risk. Like having a boundary like that, knowing how to calculate it, having sort of run some loose numbers, even if they're a few years old, so that when the time comes, you can say, all right, yes, my parent needs this medication. And yes, there is going to be out of pocket costs. And of course, I want to help them. And I'm the one picking it up. But hold up, hold up.
Mhm.
I also need to make sure that I am financially healthy and my family is financially healthy, regardless of how long this caregiving process goes on and regardless of the outcome. And so this is a boundary that I have to set for myself. Like just having that awareness of boundaries allows former caregivers, what I call them are people on the other side of caregiving,
Okay.
to to truly thrive. So I wanted to create a digital course which incorporated these three components, which are the legal and the practical elements of caregiving. And there are six general pillars. All problems typically fall into one of these six pillars. So let's understand them just in general so you have the map of the land. And now
Yeah.
let's also think about the legacy piece. And I call that the celestial navigation so that if it becomes too dark or too confusing on the land, you can take to the stars and you can look at what your family history tells you and you can look at how the stories of the people you're caring for from earlier in their life will actually guide you in caregiving for them now. And then of course, the self-assessment, the boundaries, I call that the compass. And I would argue that that's the most important part of all.
The teacher in me absolutely loves how you've woven that together and the metaphor and the analogy that you use there. Several things come up for me. The idea that we can navigate those hard times, but still come out and thrive and win, and taking nothing away from the process of grieving, and that will be probably one of the hardest things that we ever navigate. But there are ways to get through that. I think the boundary piece is not just a part to consider there. I think that's something for all of us. Do we set aside a few minutes in a day to look after our own mindset, to think about that? Do we reach out and access support from people who can help us think through some of those things? I was at a mediational conversation or a learning focused conversation, professional development. And one of the things that she offered was it's important to have that person who can reflect back for you to help you navigate through and come to some of your own conclusions. And you mentioned agency, which is important to students and to teachers and to parents and people, is that you feel you have some ownership in that part. The other piece that really resonated is I've read some of Jane McGonigal's work on, I think it was her book Super Better, and she talks about building resilience. And there's post traumatic stress, but there's also post traumatic growth. And what she explores is, why do some people thrive and why do some people continue to struggle and get pulled down and kind of get stuck in that, and that post traumatic growth is possible. We don't often talk about it a lot, but part of that is coming from building resilience, which you've talked about by setting boundaries, by collecting those stories, which I love that that's a part of it, and that and you talked earlier about reflecting back to look forward, and that those stories hold the gifts. And I think in Canada, we're exploring First Nations and Métis and the history, and how with our Truth and Reconciliation, how we're moving forward and looking at different cultures, and how is education, because I'm sorry, education keeps coming up, and you can tell I'm Canadian because I just said I'm sorry. But we talked a lot about, how do you decolonize education? How do you honor different traditions and cultures? And storytelling is an important one, and you've linked together how that will not only help you know how to navigate, but it's that legacy that will hold into the future, which I think is what we all want to leave behind, as a legacy for our family, to recognize those amazing gifts that they left us and the opportunities that they shared with us. So that really resonates in my heart, that you've pulled all of those three things together. So if you're listening to this and you're curious about Allison's course, I will have information, the podcast episode information. Reach out. I can certainly help connect you with Allison. And one of the things that came up that we were chatting about earlier was, I'm in Canada, you're in New York, because we said live from New York, which how often would I get to say that? Um, yeah, I forgot about that part. And I've been to New York once, and it was an amazing, amazing experience. We'll maybe talk a little bit about that later. Uh, but that you've put all of that information in a course. So my one question I think that will come from listeners is, if I'm in Canada or I'm in Australia or I'm somewhere else, is the legal part very specific to the US, or there's enough where I can take those kernels of information and know what to ask someone in the location that I'm at?
It's a fantastic question, and it's yes to both. So the concept is that, of course, in different countries, property will be treated differently, but in general, the same types of property will exist. And so the actual distribution channels of those property may be different, but I found that the concern is that people don't even know how to start talking to their family members about all of the different types of property and assets that exist. And they don't know how to start conversations about health decisions that should be made. And so this course is really designed to give people enough foundational knowledge so that they have the confidence to then provide the courage to go and have these conversations. So in the United States, just so you know, Stephanie, the distribution of assets in a state administration is state specific. And so I'm going to be using the examples of two of the states that I'm barred in, which are New York and New Hampshire. And by barred, I mean I can practice law in those states. I'm going to be using those as examples, particularly when they differ, to show how these sorts of things might play out. I'm also going to be explaining, just through legal education, some US tax law and how that can affect decisions. But the true concept here and the true idea is that there are certain pillars or buckets of property, and you have to understand how they're grouped together and you have to know how to start that conversation. And so this course will still be applicable to anybody who is living in a different country. In fact, I already have some people enrolled who are living in different countries. And the concept is, of course, they know that the legal education is specifically focused on the United States, but they recognize that the principles are going to hold. And the true heart of this course is just providing the foundational knowledge to then give people the practical application of how to actually hold these conversations with their family members and how to collect family stories and how to analyze and assess what it is they'll need in a current or future caregiving situation. And of course, that's just universally human.
Yes. I love that it comes back to being human and we can help each other navigate through those pieces. I was looking at the health decision piece because I think that that's an important one. And the other part that struck me was the starting the conversation. Sometimes those are not sometimes. I think they're hard conversations to start and it depends on your mindset of where pieces are at. So to have ideas, I know in our training today about how to have different conversations with people, it gave us some different prompts and things. So having a course to think about and I know you also have the Cozy Caregiver community. Did I get that right? Yeah.
Cozy Caregiver Cafe, but yes,
Cafe, yeah, sorry,
absolutely. No,
yes, cafe.
absolutely, it is a community, and I love that you even that just rolled off your tongue, so thank you, Stephanie.
So and I was like, I love that idea because I see you posting online and you can follow Allison on Facebook or on Instagram, and I will include all of her social media as well in the write-up because one day I hope to have some blog pieces going along with the podcast. Still learning how to do all of that. But I think it's that you offer an opportunity for people to come together and share and hold space for each other, and that sometimes we live in a smaller town, and so sometimes, we're fortunate that we do have access to many things where I live, but sometimes you might be in fairly remote locations or your job doesn't enable you to connect with the people that might or the things that might be available, and I was talking with another guest on Monday doing a recording, and at the end, we just thought, how life has changed because I'm talking to you and you're in New York and she was in Bali and we said like it is truly a global community and we can learn from people around the world. And so if time zones, we also said time zones. Learning about time zones is actually really important for any young people out there listening. Time zones, when you learn them in school, you would not not believe how much I often use time zones in my entrepreneurial life outside of education. But there's lots of ways to connect with people, and one of the pieces that helps us to navigate and helps us to build resilience is to have some of those connections in a network in place that actually helps our mindset. And if you're having a hard day and you've connected with someone, you have someone you can reach out to that can help give you that little bit of perspective, simply hold space with you. And I think the global part and the internet and Facebook and Zoom calls and all of those pieces. And I think a blessing of COVID, if there is one there, because I'm always looking for the silver lining inside of those, is our tech skills have gone up. We all have better access to that, to FaceTime, to Google Duo, or all of the different pieces of technology that you can use to connect. So this network can help connect you to people who can help hold that space and help you navigate. And sometimes that's easier to do with people that maybe you don't know as well. I'm not sure. And so maybe just tell us a little bit more. I'm not sure if
Oh,
that resonates
Stephanie,
okay with
my
you.
heart no, my heart is so full when I hear you talk, and it is actually it is that very reason, and this is something that is not officially public yet, but I am very excited to be sharing with you. It is for that very reason that I've decided that in January, the Cozy Caregiver Cafe is also launching a membership community. And
That
it's
is
for
awesome.
every reason that you just said. And when I was caregiving both times, there was one book that saved me, and that book was A Year with Rumi. I'm not
Okay.
sure if you're familiar with it, but basically it's 365 Rumi poems, and it's just January 1st, a poem, January 2nd, a poem. And I know C.S. Lewis has a book like this too. I mean, there are many, many great authors that have written these types of
Mhm.
literary companions. And what I found is that it was really a steadfast part of my day. It became a ritual that I could count on that I really, really loved. and it was truly important to me, and I want people to have that. I want caregivers to have that specifically, but I also wanna give them some of the mindset and some of the encouragement, some of the sitting with what's happening, but also some of the hope and sort of the elevated vision, if you will, of what life could be like, even though right now life can feel so difficult. So it's going to be 365 days of content, very much like a year with Rumi, but it's something that's honestly just been sitting in my heart for years and years and years, and I really do feel like God is saying, "Now is the time," and my dream, Stephanie, is I would love to not only have this membership community,
Mhm.
but then be able to hire other caregivers to create content for it and to become true leaders in this community as well, and so that's how we walk each other home. That's how we walk each other home.
I love that. Walk each other home. It came up in some things are just meant to be on certain days. Today, I was meant to talk to you. What came up in when we did what's your most valuable point from the day? We did a around the room sharing at the workshop today. And people said to walk with and walk alongside our colleagues and recognize that sometimes we just need to be seen. We just need to be heard. We know that we need to hear from other people that what we're doing makes a difference. And sometimes I can't see the difference I'm making because I'm too in it, and I need that person who can provide that different perspective. I think the fact that you have caregivers who will be able to share their stories and the power of that story and the ability and opportunity for them to become leaders gives a way to thrive after and during, to have those connections in advance. So that is, I'm so excited for you to
Thank
have a
you, thank
course
you.
and to have a community. And I think just for people to know that those are out there, and whether they connect with you or that connects them to someone who is local to them, or to something where they are, those are really important. And I don't sometimes when we're struggling, I don't know if we always know what's out there. And so part of my hope in the mind game is that we learn how to flip things into ways that we can see that vision. And you clearly articulated that there's a vision, that it can get better. It is hard now, but we can sail through that storm. We can reach the sun on the other side. I appreciate your social media photos because you have the sun in the background of some of them, and it just gives this warm energy for you. And I think that we can help each other walk that path and walk each other home. And that's, I
Mm.
think, what we can do, and what the world needs more of, and a way to level up is that we can do these things together, that there are support networks. So that's part of the hope of my podcast, is that it connects listeners with people for things they didn't know they needed to know, and
Mm.
or they can connect their friends to people to help them out. And so thank you for sharing that, and I wish you all the best. So if a listener has a question, please reach out. I will help you get in contact with Allison. I'll have all of her information in the summary. I think that it is wonderful. The stories, navigating that through. I love how you've linked it to the stars. You're still grounded, but we can look to the stars to hear and to help navigate those pieces, which is how we would navigate pre-GPS time, would be by the stars. So I love how you think and how you tie all those pieces together. That's how my brain works. So you see how the universe puts the right people in your path at
Oh,
the right time.
absolutely, absolutely, and thank you for being such a beautiful synthesizer of this vision. I think on any entrepreneurial vision, any entrepreneur knows that sometimes their vision can be lonely, right?
Yeah.
Because we see a need and we have abilities, and then we have this idea in our minds, and it is so incredibly, I'm trying to think of the absolute right word. It is so incredibly affirming to be with somebody who can also recognize your vision. So thank you. Thank you for sharing in my vision, Stephanie.
Thank you for sharing it with me. I can feel the energy, and that it comes from your heart. And I think anything that comes from the heart and is shared out into the world will find the people that it needs. And I think that you're right. Entrepreneurship is lonely at times. When you have as a lawyer or a teacher, you have very specific kind of connections and things that you do and those pieces. But when you become an entrepreneur, you get to do all of those different things. And TikTok feed and my Instagram Reels feed is now filled with mindset related things because that's what I love to learn about. And one of them, what struck me is you said it can be very lonely and you have this vision and you're trying to get the courage up to just to start. And one of them said, it is most lonely before you hit that next stage. So before the level up, when you're letting go of who you were and you're becoming that new person of who you're moving into, it's lonely because sometimes you're shifting and your mindset is shifting and what you're learning is shifting. And sometimes that shifts the people in your life because you're leveling up to something new and to something different. And that doesn't mean there's not still connections to those people. It's just at a different point. And sometimes sitting with those ideas alone and building up the courage to do that can be lonely. So thank you. And you were part of my journey when we were in the breakout room and you said, I love that idea. Tell me more about this, or I can see this lights you up. That reaffirming, that validation that that's a great idea. I would listen to that. I think those moments are the gifts to people. So as we head into the holiday season or come out of the holiday season, whenever you are listening to this podcast, the best gift that you can give to others, and this comes out of the PD that I did today, the best gift that you can give to others is your presence, to be in the moment with them and hold that space. And you might not know what the right thing is to say. And part of our coaching conversations where if you just listen and then check in with the person to see if that paraphrase matches where they're at, that can be one of the most reaffirming things. You don't need to tell me to do something different, but sometimes how you rephrase it can give you that affirmation. And sometimes that's just what I need in that moment to have the energy to keep going, to be brave. And so I'm excited for you to level up, to be brave, to take that next step, because hitting publish on a podcast is a little bit scary and stepping into those new area is scary. I had it all ready to publish. First thing I saw on TikTok was Mel Robbins saying, confidence begins with action. You just have to start. And I thought, if that's not a sign from the universe that I just need to hit publish and start, I don't know what is. So thank you for that and for holding space and for, I think, helping us all recognize that it's those connections and that affirmation that we seek from each other. And that's a gift that we can give that doesn't cost anything.
Thank you, Stephanie.
Does your heart feel better after listening to Allison? Mine always does. I truly appreciate the genuine energy, thoughtfulness, and vision that comes through every time I talk to Allison. The vision that through challenge we can find our way, that joy is possible, and having the hard conversations now anchors us for the storms coming ahead. And if we lose sight of the horizon, we can use the stories in the stars to help us find our way home. There's a transformative power in connection, in sharing our stories and navigating life's challenges together. While caregiving leaves no piece of the soul untouched, there's a strength found in connecting with others in the same chapter of life, in sharing those heartfelt and heart-wrenching experiences, and in the collective understanding of communities like the Cozy Caregiver Café. The level up in this episode means truly caring for your family by stepping out of your comfort zone and opening the door to conversations about what happens when we get older and our loved ones need us. It means digging into financial, caregiving, and legacy conversations. Have you taken the time to capture the stories of your loved ones so future generations can connect with their past, their people, their beginnings? If you're not sure where to start or what questions to ask, I've partnered with Allison to share her course and masterclass opportunities with you. Check out the show notes and Mind Games website for more details. You want to look for How Your Family Wins in Caregiving by Allison Wyman. And in the end, or perhaps it's the beginning of our next chapter, let us be reminded that our shared humanity binds us all. The challenges of caregiving become lighter when we lean on one another. And in a world where we're often scattered by time zones and physical distances, the beauty lies in our ability to connect, to be present for one another, and to walk each other home with grace, courage, and understanding. It's in the shared journey of life where we discover the strength, compassion, and resilience that make us truly human. I hope this episode inspires you to pause and consider what lies ahead in a way that encourages you to truly live. Here's your episode 7 Mind Game Challenge. Share this episode and consider one question you might ask a loved one to start preparing for the future. Hashtag it, level up your life. Thank you for choosing to listen to Mind Game, a podcast to level up your life. We hope that you've enjoyed the insights, inspiration, and habits shared in this episode. Your support is a game changer, and we are incredibly grateful to be on this journey with such an amazing community of listeners. If you have any wonders, questions, or suggestions about this or future episodes, we'd love to hear from you. Connect with us on social media and share your feedback. Remember, you can catch all of our episodes on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, and YouTube. Make sure to subscribe, rate, and leave a review. It helps us bring valuable content to you, our listeners. Don't want to miss the next episode? Join our Facebook group and email list and get ahead of the game. Until next time, remember to mind the game so that you can get out of your own way and level up your life.